Chill here with the Stylus Moon, and we are Moon Procyon. Moon Procyon. Mm. Our goal was minima earlier. Venus, Uranus, midheaven. Moon Procyon in the 11th, Mercury in the 8th house, so I can't do the. And ascendant with Ketu. This is Jupiter hour. I wonder, should I do a Jupiter talisman? Now the moon is applying to square Chiron. Venuranus is not appointed by Jupiter now, and the ascendant ruler is in the 8th house, with its ruler in the 8th house. Nope, nope, not from my location. And by the way, Mars rules location. So, I want to talk about the missing scientists. I want to talk about the call to slaughter. There was a breaking into the court in Israel with attempt to slaughter judges. So, I can. Yeah. Yeah. um, Prior to the 7th October, there was some sort of attempt to have a juristic revolution that calls for more representation, supposedly, except that the representation needs to be sovereign in the face of lobbying. And the fact that the separation between jurisdiction and legislative authority, the reasoning is so that the jurisdiction will be the check of the legislative authority, and then the question is, if people elect the legislative authority, which is the government, how do we check the for the tyranny of the majority? Now, a little bit about the missing scientists. Saturn, Neptune. Saturn ruling over Pluto, Pluto in Aquarius. Saturn is separating from the conjunction with Neptune, which means that we are noticing that something went missing, and this is scientists. Why did they go missing? Neptune in Aries has to do with something to do with sovereignty. Now, where were these scientists at the meeting? Because these scientists seem to have operated on a liminal space in between being in Epstein dossiers and defending outright the people that tackled with the infiltration of Epstein dossiers, namely the testimonies of the Me Too. And this liminal space got them missing. Now, for these scientists to return, what do we need? Because Neptune gives us also the what do we need so something can return. We need to make space for uninfiltrated by rape culture, sovereign scientific evolution. And this that is informed of occultism. Until we do, they have no place to return to. They'll just go missing. For example, one of the things that, in a roundabout way, assisted to the bringing of the kidnapped people in the Israel-Palestine war is the rage over ritual abuse that was. But still, the returned kidnapped people are still in situations where they commit crimes because the housing independent of ritual abuse was still not created in Israel. By the way, when when that stellium gets out of the 8th house, I might do a little bit of a pitch here that has to do with exactly that. So, second thing I want to talk about. Okay, so we got the issue with the scientists. Scientists were in the liminal space between infiltrating and being a part of the Epstein dossiers and defending against that infiltration. They went missing, and their science was probably in that liminal space. For them to return, we need to create a space where, informed of occultism, we have sovereign research, meaning zero rape, zero trafficking, zero ritual abuse, academic, and whatever it was in NASA research. The comments about NASA are understandable. Where is that song about? Sitting in a tin can. Um, would Challenger be avoided if not for the extortion calls and ritual abuse? Anyway, next topic. Juristic revolution in Israel. Now, let me read the message as it went. They basically, activists called to slaughter the judges in some sort of political committee, political investigative committee, and yeah, this is by a party that takes it against Bibi or whatnot. They will find to turn everything against Bibi, which only empowers Bibi, whatever. Now, that type of thing is another collapse. Nobody was there to, I'm sorry, even by slaughtering the judges, prevent ritual child abuse or ritual abuse, which is a part of the training for many things, including jurisdiction, also politics. And then what happens? These judges are in risk of being slaughtered anyway. Now, these judges are in a situation where they can't speak because in their position they would be decapitated or something of that sort. About the child ritual abuse that they had to do in order to. Now, of course, these judges were ritual abuse themselves. And when we think about, when somebody sparks the card of revolution, just like, when Israel and the United States attacked Iran over women's rights, of course it would create upheaval within both these countries concerning women's rights. When we attack the juristic system for not being representative, then the children that went through ritual abuse and the people that were trafficked and the people that were assaulted, they had no due procedure. Okay, think about, this is the issue of a revolution. What happens, what is a revolution? Uranus is kind of like a revolution. Uranus, for example, if I make revolution in my room and I take everything out in a mess on the floor because I say I want to create order, so I bring chaos and then order out of chaos. Somewhere along the line I would find out that there is not enough place to put everything, and those things are important things. So somewhere along the line I will face the fact that, hey, I need an actual house that is compatible with, if I am painting, for example, then somewhere along the lines, fixing my room will not be suffice. And I will have to say, okay, but Why don't I actually have a house? I can sell paintings, I can this, I can. Oh, because of the ritual abuse, that if somebody even tries to. So when we make a revolution, it doesn't matter who threw the cards, who threw the things on the floor. What stems out of it is an inevitable. Now, once they pull the juristic system and representation cards, they put all the things on the floor. Without tending to the ritual abuse of children, there will not be order out of chaos. They can now. They want to have some sort of rabbinical Jewish Sharia. People won't be able to prevent the Jewish Sharia in rape culture. And if they continue enabling rape culture, they will have to live with Jewish Sharia. And then what did Israel do to Iran? Now, by us, we only have one power station. Why we only have one power station? Because a woman alone is not safe to build a adobe house with lime wash and put a solar panel on the roof that makes water from the air, to which you can later build half moons and begin to have vegetation, the natural weeds that grow about curating of everything that we need to curate when it comes to even escaping violence. If each and every such house is a power system, invading a country doesn't shut off the energy system. But if the brotherhoods are doing torture to mind control and send children to rape people in their homes and so on and so forth, and everybody blames it on the minorities that are mind controlled by torture, by whom? And the people that have invested their life savings in certain innovation companies or tech companies realize that they are having to actually abolish rape because otherwise their investment won't yield. Or face being seen as Marie Antoinette by the people that are damaged by those investments. You know, I talked previously about the guillotine made of gold. And the people that try to make the person that goes against rape the Marie Antoinette, what will happen to them? Dead bodies upon dead bodies turning into stone mass anonymous graves. That's the Great War. Chiron is going to go through Taurus now. Last time Chiron has been with Beta Persei. Let's see if I have the possibility to do a little ephemeris here. Do we have Chiron? It's impossible to speak about a Taurus placement without singing. '26. So 1833 to 1835. 1882. 1932. When we think about the beginning of Nuremberg laws, we are definitely approaching these timelines. In 1933, now Nuremberg laws in Palestine were the people that came and were returned to Germany or to Europe the way they came by the psychiatrist that worked with the British mandate. The psychiatrist, the Jewish psychiatrist, it was one of my essays. The Jewish psychiatrists, they would return the people that would come, the Jews, back to Europe of the 1930s. And some of these psychiatrists, this was their job, because otherwise they would just become like after the Soviet Union fall. We would have doctors from USSR, but what they were studying was different to what we were studying. For example, I did not make a student exchange, yes, Erasmus in Europe, because the academia in Europe accepted me, but I studied at Chomsky where they were studying semiotics. So, but these psychiatrists, they didn't want to be bus driver. They would go work with the British mandate to diagnose who is able to work in the Jewish settlement, the Zionist Jewish settlement. And this is where the Zionists are affiliated with calling even after the World War, the Jews that came from the war, the lean Jew. And this is why Zionists are associated with Nazis, both within Jewish circles and outside. However, the orthodoxy that is still affiliated with ritual abuse of children as much as the seculars are, was not exactly the antidote, and yet that orthodoxy is what people build on when they try to negate Zionism. It's like building on Mormons to negate MAGA. MAGA, 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 MAGA. It's like, that's the same, folks. Different costumes. Red and blue. And the Jesuits. Anyway. (1983). 1983, we still have Chiron Beta Persei. A year before me. And next up is going to be 2032. Now, Chiron Beta Persei. If we take a look at 1983, let's see what happened in 1983. I think we had some sort of a depression, but wait, I'll begin with the local. Israel was going to its Saturn return. There were the committees that were supposed to publish their reports concerning Sabra and Shatila and the stock crisis. And this was and it brought to the confiscation of the big banks in Israel by the state. So we are heading towards another one. This is one, and then we're going to see what happened in the world. I was born a year after, the 1984, May. Now here is what I said. What did I say with Aries? Try to make sure you're not dependent on people being raped. I currently do not have a 401k. I do not have any retirement. What is that? In the world. The internet was born. Apparent moves to use IP. What is apparent? Apparent Advanced Research Projects and Agency Network, which was the first internet shop. It was connected to the intelligence of the defense of the United States. So this was in January. Klaus Barbie, Nazi war criminal, I know it doesn't sound like that, but that was his name, was arrested in Bolivia. Then we have the reports concerning Sabra and Shatila, which is considered a genocide. And now when I say, you can imagine that when I say genocide in Israel, it jumps a lot of resistance by a lot of people that went after Sharon. They claim that they killed only the criminals and so on and so forth. Hand grenade. Okay, this is very Israel centralized, but let's see. The death of an activist of Peace Now, Emil Greenzweig, was died by a hand grenade. Okay, let's see the world. The first news report in Israel in color. So color TV. Autonomy for Extremadura County in Spain. Autonomy for the Balearian Islands. By the way, when I was really a child, I remember when there was a boom of sovereign countries. I think after the Soviet Union fall. The greatest war, doctor strike, but this was in Israel. Ronald Reagan. Star Wars. The strategic defense initiation by Ronald Reagan in the face of ballistic nuclear threats by USSR. So another tiny Cuba Missile Crisis. And this was 23 March 1983. So nuclear on the news. Challenger. A year before me. So yeah, Chiron was the challenger. Oh my God, I just addressed that, and it's kind of like me thinking better persei and so on and so forth. Saddest for the people that were on that challenger and their families. 100 ancient watches are stolen from a museum. Okay, Hezbollah bombs Beirut and kills 63 people in U.S. embassy. Another launching of T8. This time I think it didn't burn. Oh, but it. Oh, sorry, it did. Salyut 7 did not manage to reach its spaceport because of malfunction while they were approaching that spaceport station. That was 20 April, and then but it came back successfully. Um, there was attempt to withdraw forces between Israel, Lebanon, and United States. That wasn't successful. Unsuccessful peace, 17 May. Telescope launch, Exosat. If I think about Uranus, we had Artemis. Bless you, by European Space Mission in X-rays. So lots of space stuff. This would probably also be Uranus still in Sag, because Uranus Sag would give us a big space stuff. So not all of that is, of course, Chiron. But the challenger could be the inconjunct between Uranus and Chiron. I don't know, but it's not impossible. The Soviets launched Venera 15 to explore Venus. Spaceship Pioneer 10. So we basically are in the peak of the end of the Cold War. And the race to space. Baha'i are killed in Iran. It looks like, 9 women, 10 women. This can very well be Chiron. Sally Ride, the first American astronaut that flew to space. Um, 21 July, the lowest temperature that was ever measured on Earth. Air Canada. Okay, there's an emergency landing. Nobody was hurt. Hurricane. Okay, the Air Force of USSR dropped Flight 007 of Korean Air, South Korean, and entire 269 passengers were killed. Again, Uranus was in Sag. Pluto would do his back and forth between Libra and Scorpio. Neptune would do its back and forth between Sag and Capricorn, which can also cause tremendous losses. Aviation loss. It can be the end of Neptune Sag, but I'm not positive about that. It can be. Stanislav Petrov ignores a false annunciation or false notice from basically a missile attack from United States and avoided a chain of nuclear defenses. It's interesting because we talk about JFK, but we don't talk about Stanislav Petrov. In fact, this is the first time that I hear about him, and his measured response prevented a nuclear holocaust. So some sort of Unix-like system, GNU, was declared by Richard Stallman. October, the crisis of the banking, of the stock market crisis. First cellular phone and first cellular web. Again, this I think is Uranus. The cellular, the tech is the big tech is definitely Uranus Sag. double bombing in Beirut, again Uranus-Sag, big bombings, big terror events, the mass shootings as well. Pluto, I think Pluto-Sag would be the mass shootings. But this was the big bombs, everything aviation going boom, including the Challenger. Martin Luther King Day was declared by Ronald Reagan. And another bombing of Islamic Jihad. Turkish Republic of North Cyprus declares independence, but acknowledged only by Turkey. This is, it sounds like colonialism. It sounds like If they declared independence from Turkey, what would happen? I don't know. London, okay, so somebody robbed the Brinks in London and found gold. It's almost 26 million sterlings, 6,800 gold. How do they call it? Bullions. Raúl Alfonsín becomes president of Argentina in its first election after the dropping of the military junta, and Yasser Arafat is evacuating Lebanon following rebellion in his lines of the Fatah, PLO. You have to say it like. Now we have a broadcaster that does the Middle East, and they have to know Arabic, so they speak. You see this Ashkenazi Jews speaking perfect Arabic. So, if I try to remove the effects of Uranus in Sag, then Uranus would contribute to big volatility of the markets, but beta persei is currency, and that's definitely the stocks market drop. And why do stocks market drops happen? Don't give me your funny economic answers. The occultism behind currency. Now, to be honest, other than the currency stuff, big world events with Chiron, beta persei, were not so noted. Of course, we cannot have a Challenger disaster or a big bombing without the torturing of people to make them basically suicide bombers. And this is behind the currency issues, because those things of course affect the currency issues. Let's read a little bit about the stock market. Okay, so most of the banks were trying to manage the rate of their stocks promising continuous rise, which is such a thing is a recipe for the Great Depression. And they were trying to prevent decline or even freezing in their stocks, even for one day. By the words of David Klein, it was the peak of the managing of the stock market by the banks that was lasting for many years. It brought a confiscation of the big banks in Israel. And most of the stocks declined with the basically as they consolidated the stock market. Now, when we're talking about many years, we would be talking at least since the 60s. We talk about long-term investments. Like I said, rape builds no economy. After Pauline Bank, next of the banks were consolidated, except for the First International Bank. And so the bank were immediately creating market demand for their stocks and withdrew with the daily rate that they wanted. They were using the money that was invested in the banks for the people that were saving money. Now, again, if people work, somebody, a colleague, somebody is sexually harassed, they go embargo on that colleague. What were they expecting their investments to do at the bank? This is when parents kill their children so that the children will not be trafficked. This is also causing the type of operations where people agree to unalive children if it's without suffering. Now, usually these times are juxtaposed with policies that try to force people to have children, which is another bad investment. Okay, if somebody votes for a party that forces people to not divorce or to have children, I remind you the children that were born to parents where the parent was trafficked, first of all, a lot of them are not alive. Um, and then people, the fundraising for this type of activity by the banks was done on the account of bonds. Now, when there is a financial crisis, the last to go are the Bolikolis. Part of the Bolikolis is the state bonds. So they were eating at the state bonds. This is what happens where When there is rape of the infants that's invisible, the fiscal equivalence is eaten at the bolicol, is eaten at the bonds. In the zero usury bank that was in Amsterdam, it was eaten at the gold reservoirs. It was supposed to be 100% gold reservoirs. And then Volk took the gold and brought silver. Why? Because there was still normalization of rape. When people call rape sex work, then they better prepare to have way less gold in the bank. If people allowed such situation that people will be raped and they were saving money, eating potatoes, saving money, saving money, saving money, and that is invested in behousing the people that were against rape, having no savings, no future, nothing to back it up. Criticizing the expenses of the people that went against systematic rape in academia, in rehabilitation centers, in hospitals, at the military complex. And making it look as if they were the crazy, if they were the problem. Then, of course, they can't rely on the bank. In 1983, the bubble popped, and people began to buy foreign currency, which dropped, of course, the currency. And many clients of the banks began to go bankrupt because they were buying stocks with credit that they didn't have coverage for. Now, another reason they didn't have coverage for, because their coverage was basically used to exterminate the bolicoli. That's the credit. What is agach? Okay, bonds, state credit. Where is the credit when you take a loan, when you take something by credit, where's the credit coming from? Now here is another thing in the subprime. The many people that when people were saying, wait a second, I'm not ready to tell the people that are paying buying in 4,000. Yeah, you go at the end of the conversation where they can barely hear like the small lines. Oh yeah, I'm setting your credit monthly return to 400 when you waste 4,000, and the next is subprime plus black market. And nobody stands. Somebody says, hey, I'm not willing to do that. Nobody stands in their favor. The people that were hired to work because of my ideas, because of when I identified an option to a place that was supposed to be closed and shut down. Me being 20. People bring children and build families on their peers being silenced, oppressed, targeted. And then when they retraded, 17% drop, a lot of people were selling. Most people preferred to keep the stocks. $6.9 billion this adventure was costing. And of course, when we're talking about stock market, we're talking about an international one. And some of the advices for a reform in the stock market would only be applied years later. And this is where the banks decided to roll it on the fees per client and began to classify clients by their credit score. Now, all of that is lovely when a person doesn't need any of that for a house. I said that when I was 14. I'm saying that when I was almost 42. And the banks began to work less in regions where there were less business potential. Now, all of that is less problematic when people do not depend on that for their housing, for their safety, for their food. However, this was only enabled when people were raped in their houses, where infants were targeted. Where infants were raped in occultistic rituals that had to do with the banking and the currency. If all the jobs are infiltrated by trafficking, it means that the actual job market doesn't exist. And we can see that with the structure that causes disability. There isn't a reason that any employee will have no chair in their job. That makes the workplace not a workplace, it's an erased workplace. Now, do you think that business won't be bombed? This is how businesses that competed over the real estate begin to lose their business. Chiron will ingress this year, and Chiron has moved to 27 degrees Aries, and Mars hour in the 8th house, and we're talking about the wound around people's life insurances, boli-colis, or passive income from real estate. No, seriously, think about an investment sector, okay? Let's say I want to invest, let's say I'm an angel investor, and I want to invest in a high-tech company developing, I don't know, give me an idea, defense against targeted individuals companies. Now, I need to understand what is this business sector? Who is going to be paying? Because the money should come from those that targeted the individuals. By the way, a business model that works on the targeted individual paying for their defense is not a business model, it's extortion. And it's also illegal, it's a crime against humanity. Entire weapon industry feels called out. Now in Israel, they already broke into a, a jurisdiction, a state basically, and were preparing to slaughter the judges. Where were they at the Me Too? How many judges sexually harassed infants that had no juristic procedure? Now, if somebody invests, let's say, in the real estate sector, who is going to pay the rent? If let's say, let's say the estate is for business, amazing. What type of businesses? How is the business? If somebody's supposed to pay the rent, and this rent is for business, for example, how does this business work? First of all, if that business doesn't work, the person will sleep in the business. If that business works very well, the person might sleep in the business as well. If somebody's sexually harassed in that business, if I invest in that estate, it's my investment. The people that were sexually harassed deserve the building that they were sexually harassed in. Because the sexual harassment is occultistic rape that is done to buy a building. Even to the simple term, oh, tenants are supposed to pay the rent. Amazing. People are crying over not having affordable housing. Go ask in the groups that they speak about what is affordable housing for them. How much can they afford to pay for rent for the last so and so years, even if they drop out of work or something happens to them? Market research. Or at least be prepared to have a loss in the state for rent. Don't check the tenants, check the sector, check the markets. The market is your tenants. If your tenants are raped, they will ruin down the house. And then you will check the tenant, or what you will do, you will flip the house or buy a flipped house, check the tenants again the same story. Go to a company, now the company flips the house. And that's the story of private equity. Everybody big mad at private equity. Where were they to check the market before they checked the tenant? When I was sexually harassed in academia, I didn't say, check that person who sexually harassed me. I said, wait a second. Let's check the structure that created and manufactured a sexually harassing somebody that wants to traffic. Because that structure is my issue. And try to prevent me from having housing, income, or even sanity if I say no. Is this the one person that has so much global power to do these things? If yes, then let's expose that, because that person was an adjunct in where I met them. And for the whole world, it is better for that power to be decentralized. But if not, then where is the problem? The structure needs to make sure people are not raped in the structure. Chiron is doing his last degrees in Aries. And it's going to move from the Aries sector to Taurus, approaching towards 2032, Beta Persei. Beta Persei's story is very simple. Either we abolish rape, stop blaming the raped for being raped, stop using psychiatry as punishment for speaking up about rape, or dead bodies upon dead bodies. Now, Beta Persei essentially is a currency crisis, because the rape was occultistic to create wealth. And so when is not rape with Beta Persei, then Beta Persei does bring wealth. But when is rape, it brings a bubble that pops. And then it pops into dead bodies upon dead bodies, because the dead infants, the people that unalive themselves, the people that ended in dead alive situation because of these currency rituals, they did not have due procedure. What happened when they blamed women for being hysterium or hysteric? What happened to men? Beta Persei reminds us that rape is also not currency. And towards Chiron, Beta Persei, we're going to see more and more. Either people are going to abolish ritual abuse and rape, that inherently is an occultistic practice meant to steal the life energy from people and steal the survival and wealth of people. Because what is wealth? Wealth is our sense